We should be writing.
We should be writing.
We should be writing.
All right. Hi, I'm Nick. Wait, nope, that sucked.
Off to a strong start.
Off to a great start. All right. Welcome to the debut episode of We Should Be Writing. I'm Nick Boddick, who you might, but probably, if you were on No Sleep 5 to 7 years ago, you might recall my name, and I'm here with my co-host, the ever more popular and better writer, Grand Theft Motto, aka Travis Brown. Hi, dude.
How's it going? And I am one of your biggest fans. I do remember reading your work about 5 years ago when I first started on No Sleep, and I thought to myself, what a cool guy this must be. And now look, I get to do a podcast with you.
Now here
Crazy.
we are. It's good. I didn't know you were you just reading back then? Because I don't remember you being around because I was there when like C.K. Walker was real big, Felix Blackwell, Dathan Auerbach.
So I probably started reading like 2015 through 17, and I didn't post anything until either very late 2018 or early 2019.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I remember seeing some of the stuff pop up, and things like Left Right Game. I was there. That was one of my favorites, and I never thought I'd actually post to No Sleep. It just seemed like a cool thing to look at, and then sometimes you get that bug. I'm like, well, I'll try. I'll put a story up there. And then if you post it, and my first one did well, it's like just an immediate, I got to keep doing this.
For sure. Sure. Yeah. I remember my first story was terrible and it did nothing. I think it got negative upvotes actually.
Wow.
It was a good concept, and it's one that I've been actually meaning to for the last 7 years to go back to. It was about I think it was a fashion designer who is working from home, and they have a mannequin, and it's just moving around. But I wrote it in that early No Sleep style, where it's can you help me I think it literally ended with, need help, what should I do? And it was it was so bad. But then the second one I wrote was this huge sweeping 8-part series, and everyone loved it. And I had the same thing. I was like, I can't not do this ever again.
You have to chase that karma. Well, and then after my first one did well, I got so hyped to do my next one. And then I planned a big series like that. And it was going to have all this deep existential metaphysical tie-ins to your mental health and the way that monsters are formed in our psyche. A lot more in depth than my first one, which was about a crawl space that had locks on the outside. Which is ooh, spooky. The only reason I think it did well too was that the title was that locks on that crawl space. But then the second one, when I posted it a couple days later, I'd stayed up super late writing it. I was so ready. I'm like, this is gonna be my big breakthrough. It'll be the next Stephen King. Notice me, Netflix. It bombed. It bombed so hard. I think I got I don't know if it was in the negatives, but maybe 11 upvotes total on part one, which was super long. So after that, I took a break and I didn't post No Sleep again for a year. I was just wow. Nope, I'm done. Yeah, I went to sulk off in my corner.
Yeah. Did you ever end up finishing it, writing the story?
No, it died. I think I even deleted it, which is the only story I believe that I've actually deleted off of No Sleep. After that, and I was such a baby about it, I have a new policy where even if a story flops, I'm just going to leave it up there because we get better with each story. We don't need to always chase external gratification. These are things I tell myself every time I post. Right. But that was a big lesson learned. And really, I think summarizes that rhythm of No Sleep. Some days you feel on top of the world and you'll have something huge and popular. And it's wow, people are reading this and leaving comments and sending messages, and it's great. And then other times it feels like you're just shouting alone into the Grand Canyon in the middle of the night. There's just no response.
Yeah. And it's so disheartening. Yeah, 1 second. Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay. All right. Just making sure. So the only story I've ever deleted it was a really, really popular one actually. I think at the time it was my second or third most upvoted story. And it was called My Wife Keeps Digging Holes at Night. and 6 months prior, I had read Felix Blackwell's Romantic Cabin Getaway.
Hmm.
You know, the all-time no sleep classic.
It's fantastic. Yep.
Yeah, and I had like unconsciously, it was there was certain things in my story that were like way too similar to that, and it wasn't like a conscious thing. Like, all right, I'm gonna use these elements from Felix's story, but he messaged me and was like, "Hey, dude, like." You have a story about a wife who's getting up in the middle of the night and doing creepy shit. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's exactly what it is. So I ended up taking it down, and yeah, he
Uh,
was really cool about it. Like he was like, don't take it down. It's not like it's clearly not actually plagiarism, but I
yeah.
don't know. It just didn't feel right leaving
Inspired
it
by
out.
it. And then maybe then the two of you are to blame for. I think the current no sleep trend right now is creepy family members, and Molly, a girl who passed me for number two of all time, with her. My wife keeps like peeking at me at night, which
Yeah, I
is
just read that
fantastic.
actually. Yeah,
It's so it's one of those really solid no sleep things where it doesn't seem that scary until you read it and you're like, yes, that would actually be terrifying if a family
yeah,
member started acting like that. But now I've noticed that one of the big trends seems to be that it's like, my wife is planning something, or I even wrote one because I'm nothing if not a bandwagon hopper, where it's just like my stepdad keeps something secret in his garage or shed.
that was
But
you.
well,
I
might
didn't
have
know that
been.
was
You might be
yours.
thinking of it. They all kind of blur together. I wrote one about a stepfather who was in a cult, and the son finds the stuff in the shed.
Okay,
Uh,
I'm pretty
yeah.
sure I actually did. No, you know what? You know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of there was one where a neighbor was like gets a package delivered to their house or something, and they
Oh,
keep it in their
that one. Yeah.
garage.
Hmm.
I think that's the one I'm
Well,
thinking
that's an
of.
old classic. I just threw this one together like a month ago.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
that's one of those that every time it comes up on OOC, like, what are the quintessential no sleep stories? And everyone says Vraska, Spire, Left, Right. I think I've posted that one before because that was a really good one. That was a really cool idea. And
Yeah,
there's a ton of popular, but not like infamous or famous no sleep stories that really deserve it. Everything Elias Witherow's pretty much ever done. For example,
for
like a lot of people
real.
know Tommy Taffy, but Feed the Pig as well,
Feed the
and just like
Pig is
everything
great.
he posted. Yep.
Have you read the novels, like the Black Farm novels?
No, but now I'm going to. I didn't realize those were a thing.
Yeah, there's two of them. The first one is it pretty much starts with just Feed the Pig
Mm.
as like the opening chapters, but it goes way more into it. It's really good stuff. He's so
Oh,
good.
Sam's gonna read them, but I don't know if I will because Tommy Taffy legitimately disturbed me. It's like one of those
Yeah,
few no sleep ones that is you read it and you're just like, oof. I
yeah,
glad I read it the one time.
yeah, dude. He got like death threats for that.
It was wild. All the
Yeah,
stuff though. He's such a visceral but talented writer, and I hope to
yeah,
see more of that on No Sleep. I think these days it's too easy to kind of fall into again chasing those trends and doing sort of
yeah,
like I know most of my stuff now is just like a template. It's like I know what will fit within the rules. I know what's
yeah,
probably going to be popular, so it's really hard to push yourself to get out of that just for No Sleep. Now, if you're writing for like a podcast or to put it in a book, you can experiment more. But I think for No Sleep, it's so much easier to sort of stay in that lane.
yeah. And that's exactly why I stopped writing for No Sleep. I just
Yeah.
like it got too suffocating, and like it's cool seeing what people can do within like what's allowed, even though what's
Mhm.
allowed has gotten so small, it seems like.
Yeah.
But like you said, like the template. But my cat is meowing like crazy.
I,
You can hear it or not. We have five of them, so it should
nice.
be
I think
fun.
my sister's at 7. We just have one dog who is, I think, lazily hanging out downstairs and better not be doing anything, Parker. He chewed on her bed the other day, so now we're just watching him. But he's
Yeah,
mostly.
we deal with fur everywhere and multiple piles of puke every time we get out of bed in the morning. So that's fun.
Yeah, it's the joy of
But speaking of underrated, like the ones that aren't always mentioned on, because there's like a one of the classic no sleep story posts like every day in the OOC. But have you ever read
Mhm.
Pete the Moonshiner?
I've not read that one. Who did that?
Man, I To be honest, I don't even remember. Nobody famous. I don't think they ever wrote anything else. Um, that like when I think of stories with a gut punch,
Hmm.
that's the one that comes to mind. I think that might have actually been like within the first 5 stories I read on No Sleep. It was, and man, it's it's good. It's really short too.
Okay. I found
Yeah.
it. So for anyone, if you do end up posting this, it's by you/oven friend, who's actually the best monthly winner of 2014.
Oh,
Doesn't say
really?
what month. I guess it's because this was 8 years ago, um, back in the day. But it's almost up to 5,000 upvotes, which back then must have been freaking massive.
Yeah, but um, I don't think it got that back then because you can go back in certain subreddits now and upvote old posts.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think those because I remember reading it and it was like it was under 1,000 for sure. I think under 500 when I first found it, and which was years ago.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so it's popping up, and apparently, Oven Friend has a website called ovenfriend.com. So
Oh,
fun stuff.
interesting. I did
Yeah.
not know that. What are you
Cool.
reading right now? What are you reading, watching, working on?
So, working on, I've got one I can't talk about a lot yet, but it's based on kind of like comic book stuff. And it's nice. It's a paid project. It's an actual cool thing that I'm very excited because I've always wanted to be involved with. I think you're a comic fan as well, if I recall from your Twitter.
Unabashedly.
A bit unabashedly. So I'm very excited about that. I had to sort of learn new formatting, which I'm always excited to do. So this is really about writing within the panels, and it's so similar to short stories, but feels completely different because you have to really segment descriptions, and you got to be very precise with your dialogue, and it's just because basically you're telling the artist, this is how I see it in my head. Can you please yank this out of my brain and then actually illustrate it? So that's been really fun. I'm excited to work on that, and then I've just been doing some true crime podcast things. And in terms of what I'm reading, Paul, I think it's pronounced Tremblay, who did
All right,
Cabin at
Head
the End of
Full
the
of
World
Ghosts.
and Head Full of Ghosts. Those are the two I've read so far, and I'm just going to wipe out the rest of his library because absolutely unbelievable. Loved Head Full of Ghosts. Same with Cabin. I know a lot of people that the ending's kind of controversial, but I just thought the whole book was so strong, and he's got such like a unique and interesting voice where it's similar in both of them, but it's very distinct. Um, and I'm excited to see what the rest of his novels are like. Also, fun fact: I posted about how much I liked it on Twitter, and he actually replied. I'm just like, celebrity.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, Tremblay is awesome. Um, him and Stephen Graham Jones are two dudes I've gotten into recently. Because Tremblay just had a new one come out. The Paul Bearers Club, I think.
Yep, I heard of that. That
And
one's on the list.
yeah, it's on my list too. It's actually, if I had an ordered to be read list, I think
Hmm.
that's like third on that list. But
Well, what are
speaking of,
you? Yeah, what are you reading right now? What are you into?
I've been reading short stories because so I have this thing where like whatever I'm reading is what I have to write. Like I'm so like I soak it up so much that like my brain doesn't allow me to like read, I don't know, like gore horror stuff and then write a paranormal story. It's same with stuff that I watch. That's why like if I'm writing, yeah, I can't watch like certain movies or read certain stories because that's just where my
Just takes
brain will go
over.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so lately I've been reading short story, like weird fiction stories. So like Thomas Ligotti, John
Mhm.
Paget, uh, Paul Tremblay. He's not so much weird, but I have been reading a lot of his short stuff. A lot of Laird Barron too, and that's where I've next on my list is his actual non-horror series, the Isaiah Coleridge series recently, which is really cool for a thing that I'm doing that I can't talk about. I'm gonna have to cut that part out.
Is that always fun? Be like, oh, I want to talk about this. But I'm like, there's kind of a non-disclosure thing. Like, not gonna
Yeah,
happen.
unfortunately. Okay, so 14. All right.
Well, that's cool though. That's absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic.
So back to comics, I know I guess, kind of annoyingness. My wife is making my cat dance right now.
That'll
It's pretty funny.
have to be the intro.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, she's really going after it too. Sorry. Okay, anyway, so yeah, me and this incredible artist, Taylor Tate, uh, we actually wrote and we produced a comic. I wrote it, she did the art.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's definitely, like you said, it's definitely a learning experience. Like, it's completely different from like prose.
Mhm.
It's not the same at all, because like the way I did it, I don't know how you're doing it, but the way I did it was because like you said, you're basically everything is just notes to the artist.
Mhm.
And
Panel
so
one, split panel, blah 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 blah.
exactly, you have to describe it as best you can and just hope that you hope that you're communicating it efficiently enough. um Neil Gaiman actually did a master class on writing comics, which,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's worth checking out. It helped me a ton. And but yeah, we actually did a Kickstarter for that and it got funded. That was really
All
cool. Cause yeah, like that was a bucket list thing for me. Cause I've been reading comics since I was a kid, and like I just wanted to see my name on the cover of one. So that was pretty sick.
I see the Batman collection there in your shelf. What are your? I guess I know it's hard to pick just one. What would be your top three um, comics or collections, or even runs or series? Like, pick your top three desert island. This is what I'm bringing with me.
All right, I got my top two for sure. The third one could vary. So it kind of goes one and two kind of switch depending on my mood.
Mm,
And it's between Batman Volume 2 by it was the New 52 Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, and
mhm.
it tells a complete story from start to finish of Batman and gives a new origin, and like it's just a great characterization of Batman, and Scott Snyder very clearly understands the character at his core, which a lot of people who do Batman don't. It seems like they make
Mhm.
him like too dark and broody, or not dark and broody enough, and Scott Snyder just like
There's a
got it.
sweet spot of Brood. Yeah.
There really is, yeah. Like he has to be depressing, but he can't just be a total downer
Mhm.
24/7. And Greg Capullo is always good. I mean, he's just one of the best of all time. And then yeah, I gotta say tied for that is Garth Ennis's Punisher Max, which
Ooh.
was, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, dude.
That's a good. I haven't read a lot of. I've read a good bit of Ennis. I haven't read a lot of Punisher Max, but I know it's just like, I mean, regular Punisher is already pretty brutal and messed up, and then some of the synopsis I've read of Punisher Max is just like, wow, that is dark. That is some
Yeah,
twisted.
yeah, and it's another one that I love so much just because it tells a complete story. And like, because comics is such a fickle industry that like from what I've read, most writers slash artists who get hired to do a book will only plan for, like Neil Gaiman, to use him again, he only planned for the first 8 issues of Sandman. He
Mm,
figured they were going to get canceled at the end of the year, and that um, that he planned it. He planned to tell a complete story in 8 issues, or 12, sorry, 12 issues. He thought
mm,
they were going to get a year. So it was 2 volumes of 6 issues each, and then he, like I said, he expected they were going to get canceled, but then that ended up going on to become 75 issues and a bunch of spin-offs. But that is definitely the exception and not the rule.
mhm.
More like, I mean, there's so many series, would be series that got 4 issues and nobody was buying them, so like, okay, you're done, go work
Yeah.
on Hulk or whatever. So I always just love it when there is a complete story to tell. And it's the worst when a book is really good but nobody's reading it and it just gets canceled before, like, just stopped at
Mhm.
in the middle of a story arc and there's no resolution whatsoever.
That'd be like if
That's
Netflix ran a comic label because they are constantly canceling.
dude.
Speaking of, I saw that now the fate of season 2 of Sandman, which I'm sure you've probably seen on Netflix, I enjoyed quite a bit,
Yeah.
is up in the air. They're not sure if Netflix is going to bite on season 2, which I think would be such a shame because it was so well done. And while they changed some of the material, I think it was all done with Neil's blessing, and he was involved with it. And I love Sandman, and that's so I didn't realize that when he had planned it, it was for such a short run. I assumed that everyone was like, Neil Gaiman's doing a comic, but I guess he hasn't always been like Neil Gaiman,
Yeah.
and that he would have all these resources. But it's crazy because then he ends up writing this huge, popular, seminal work. And I think that one of the issues, I think it was the Shakespeare one, is the only comic to win. Was it a Hugo or a
World
Nebula?
Fantasy Award.
World Fantasy Award.
Yeah. Dude,
Which is
so
wild.
I don't know how this happened. There is no tie for the number 1 spot. It's a tie for the number 2 spot. I'm just brain fart, dude. Like, Sandman
Mhm.
is my life. I've read Sandman probably 6 times all the way through. 1 to 75 plus Overture plus Death. And like, I've read every word of Sandman, all the spin-offs. Like, so that's my number 1. And then Batman and then Punisher. We'll go with that. That's my order.
Those are 3 very good ones.
Yeah.
Also,
What about you? So are you like a comic reader? Like, are you a fan?
I am. I dabble.
Of
I'm not. I'm one of those where it's just like I try to get as much variety as possible because I think it does. I'm not like you. I don't like if I'm taking in media that doesn't just take over, but it definitely influences.
Yeah.
So I like to switch stuff up quite a bit. And for a while, I was reading screenwriting and playwriting stuff, trying to learn about that. But I'll jump back into comics every couple months. And I mean, for me, probably Sandman gets in there as well, which is such a solid and unique uh, medium. And I just remember the issue with the battle between Lucifer and Dream and the way that they're having that almost like epic rap battle.
Yeah, right.
And they did it well in the Netflix show, but I just remember being
Mhm.
stunned when I was reading it and how good it was.
Yeah.
I don't love Frank Miller as a person, but Dark Knight Returns is just such a great book.
That's a classic Batman story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, a lot of mine would probably be Batman too. It's hard to get away from something like Killing Joke. Might be there, but actually, so Dark Knight Returns, Sandman, and then I think my third would be Superman Red Sun, which I love how much it explores that really razor edge between being this absolute moral good and being evil without changing too much of your personality. Like Superman is still Superman in that, but there's for anyone who hasn't read it, I'm not going to spoil it, but run out and get Superman Red Sun. How much of it is just about control and how easy it would be if you had the power to like fix the world, how tempted you would be to exercise that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and there's been so many. I mean, like even the most casual of comic readers knows the idea of an evil Superman has been done to death. Like ever since Death of Superman, which I don't remember when that was, 80s I think maybe. And
yeah, like early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah, and like I think the best one to do it is a toss up between Red Sun, which is you're right, like it's such a just it's almost a perfect comic, I think.
And it's too because I 100% with all the like Superman XPs and the evil knockoffs, he was still like good in that. It's just it was this mispurposed good that he ended up just hurting people. So it's one of those where stuff like The Boys or Irredeemable are cool or Injustice because then you see like an actual kind of like, what if Superman went bad? But in this one, it's he still thought he was doing good, and that's what makes it so scary.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah, my favorite. So Red Sun's probably in my top 10. Just overall comics ever. Diego, oh my god.
Trying to get on the podcast.
Yeah, right. And then our other cat is a total bitch. His name is Victor, and he just jumped at Diego, and now he's gonna go be a victim about it.
Oh,
And
poor
yeah, no, he's cool. Yeah, he's starting now. He's starting to whine about it like he didn't just antagonize Diego. But my favorite of the Superman Gone Bad stories, and it's by no means a perfect book, but Injustice.
Yeah,
Have you read Injustice by chance?
I have, and I remember playing the heck out of both of the games.
Yeah.
And that's another good one because it's not evil Superman. I always go back to Irredeemable as one of the which I don't know if you've
Yep.
read.
Oh yeah.
I enjoy that one a lot, but it's a very basically Superman just being evil, not actual Superman, it's the Plutonian. But and stuff like Injustice, he's still trying to do good,
Mm-hmm.
but it's exercising so much control that it's like, what if God decided we don't get free will anymore? That's basically the effect that Superman has on this universe.
Yeah.
And it's such a cool story. And actually, I'm a huge fan of the Justice League animated series because that's what I was watching when I was growing up. And
Classic.
Batman the animated series,
Oh yeah.
Superman, of course.
Yep.
But the Justice League cartoon did the Injustice Lords, which is sort of a precursor to Injustice, and it was very similar to this. And you've got Superman running around. He still won't kill people, but he'll just lobotomize them with his heat vision, which is so much darker in a lot of ways because he sees it as better. He's like, well, yeah, I'll just make you a zombie. Now you can't hurt anybody. And there's nothing anyone can do to stop him.
Yeah. Oh man, one of my favorite Superman anything is from Justice League, the animated series, for the Man Who Has Everything.
Yes. That one was it was crushing.
Yeah. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was so happy. And then they just take it away.
It's anyone who thinks it's that it's a cartoon for kids. I mean, it is. It's a cartoon that kids can watch. But it was so heavy and complex compared to a lot of stuff that you might see pop up now. That was one of my favorite episodes. And then towards the end, he did his World of Cardboard speech when he was fighting Darkseid in one of the, I think, season finales. And it's like such a well-written, not just for a comic or a cartoon, but Superman explaining, like, I have to walk through the world like I could break it at any point. And this is a moment where I get to not have to worry about that. And it's scary, too, because you're like, man, if Superman ever wanted to hurt people, there's nothing you could do.
He could crush everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That show
Great
was...
show.
Yeah, and Batman the Animated Series just changed the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's why Kevin Conroy is always going to be my Batman. I love Michael Keaton. Christian Bale is solid. Robert Pattinson didn't do bad. I enjoyed him. I was surprised. And if you've seen the new the Batman, I guess. Movie, it was solid. But I mean, Kevin Conroy to me is Batman. Just that whole voice is everything that makes Batman Batman.
For sure. When I'm reading the comics, I hear Kevin Conroy's voice.
Yes.
For sure. But if it comes to live action Batman, and I know I am the minority opinion, Ben Affleck.
You're not going to say Val Kilmer. Oh, okay, Ben Affleck.
Oh man, no. Ben Affleck. He was I know, Kimmy. I know. See. He was the perfect aged, weathered Bruce Wayne. Okay, the jaded, angry, just disillusioned Bruce. She's doing this to me. See what I got to deal with? See what I got to live with?
I didn't realize you were on camera.
Yeah, I'm on camera. Yeah. But yeah, no, Ben Affleck. I liked Robert Pattinson a lot, though. He was fantastic.
I don't completely disagree. I think that with like the Spider-Man issue. Sorry, I'm just chugging Tic Tacs. Sometimes they'll find an actor who's a perfect Peter Parker or perfect Bruce Wayne, but not as good as Spider-Man or Batman, or vice versa. I think that Ben Affleck was a great Batman. I think he was a terrible Bruce Wayne. I did not feel any of the Bruce Wayne, like, fake charming, but hiding pain kind of vibe from him. But whenever he put on the bat suit, I saw it. I'm like, that is perfect. That is an aging Batman. That is somewhere between, Batman Begins and Dark Knight Returns. That is like the perfect middle point. And actually, I think it'd be great to do a Batman movie, but a Batman Beyond movie where it starts
Yes.
with Ben Affleck aging like 50 or so, and starting to have heart issues. He puts on the new suit, almost gets a heart attack, and just like Batman, Beyond, he ends up grabbing a gun, and he realizes that he can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Flash forward, and then old Batman, Michael Keaton, of course, and then you get a
Naturally.
new actor in as Terry McGinnis to take up the mantle. And I think that having all three of those versions of Batman would be such a great movie. And I think they use Michael Keaton in the Flash movie as old Batman, but I'm not sure if we're
Yeah.
ever going to see the Flash movie because Ezra Miller is apparently insane.
Yeah, and the fact like Michael Keaton was also supposed to be in Batgirl,
Mhm.
which they just
And now we
canceled
don't even
that.
get Batgirl. Yeah, and Brendan
Yeah, I know.
Fraser. And I love Brendan
Right?
Fraser.
Yeah, he was going to be Firefly, right? I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which is such a cool villain to actually put in there.
Seriously, that's like because man, I'm on Reddit all the time. I'm in like the comic book / movies subreddits,
Mhm.
and there once the Batman came out earlier this year, there was who do we want? What villains do we want for the next the sequel? And everyone's like, Scarecrow would be so good. Oh, I hope they bring back the Joker. And I'm just like, we've seen all these people, so like everyone has done great jobs with them, and I'm sure they could do something different again. But you're talking about a character in Batman who, like, with Batman, you're talking about a character who has arguably the best collection of
Rogues
villains
Gallery.
in all
100%.
of fiction. In all of fiction,
Yeah.
except
Give
for
me-
maybe Spider-Man.
I think that some of Spider-Man's villains are deeper, but I think the Batmans are better Batman villains because they're all reflections or dark mirrors
Of
of
him.
an aspect of him. Yeah, like Bane
Yeah.
having his strength, Joker just being like this massive force of nature. In the same way
Yeah.
that Batman is for order and Joker's for chaos. But
Yeah.
100% agree. There's so many great Batman villains, and if you haven't seen it yet, there's a show on HBO Max, Harley Quinn.
It's amazing.
I am shocked at how good it is. It's one of those where
Seriously.
the character development for this raunchy, crazy, violent comedy is so strong. And
Mhm.
I just love all the characters, and it makes all these B and D list villains too really shine. And their version of Bane is now my favorite ever because the voice is so close to how Tom Hardy actually sounds.
Yeah,
But
it's so comedic.
yeah. And then they even did. I want to see if I had to pick two. I'd pick Calendar Man for the next one, and a new shot at Mr. Freeze because as much as I love Arnie, the Mr. Freeze character is so amazing as a villain because he's like again, you understand his motives. He is trying to save his wife.
Yeah,
And Batman the Animated Series, again, knocked that out of the park. Like, such a tragic villain that could make a really compelling person for Batman to clash with. And I think Calendar Man is just fun. Or they could do a Hush one if they did something with Hush.
yeah, because they dropped that hint. They dropped that
Yeah.
little Easter egg about Hush's.
Which, with DC, not everything needs to be Marvelized where it's all sort of like Legos that fit together. But
Yeah.
DC is getting so confusing and weird because now you've got Joker, which isn't part of the universe but is a popular movie. You've got the
Yeah.
Batman, which isn't really part of it. Justice League, Shazam, that is. It's a mess, and it's like they need to kind of like settle up.
Yeah, and I mean that's been the problem with the DC extended universe from the beginning. Like you said, like I'm the biggest MCU fan you'll ever meet in your life, but like DC, it would be fine if they just had movies like they used to be. Not everything used to be interconnected universes, and not everything needs to be. And maybe if they want to try it again a decade down the road, sure, that'd be cool. But like, yeah, they have so many great characters, and like it just collapsed under its own weight, I think, and because they didn't build enough foundation.
Yeah, they rushed it. They went right to. They tried to do Avengers first, basically.
Exactly.
They could have had. I mean, they did a solo Superman movie, Man of Steel, which I liked. Not everyone liked it. To me, it's the
I
closest we've ever
liked it.
gotten to a good Dragon Ball Z live action movie. Basically,
Right?
like there's like punching, buildings are exploding,
Yeah.
but yeah, they didn't put in the work. They did that, and then it's just like, all right, we're gonna do like Batman versus Superman, and then we're gonna jump right to Justice League. So laying that
Which,
foundation, yeah,
yeah, like, and the jump from Batman vs Superman to Justice League, where in one movie Bruce Wayne is literally trying to murder Superman. To the next one, he's like, he's our only shot to save the world. We need to protect him at all costs. I'm like, come on.
Yep.
Like, that needed. Batman vs. Superman alone could have been a trilogy.
yeah,
If,
and it should have been because they could have
yeah.
done another Superman solo movie where we get peaks of Batman and Wonder Woman, and
Yep.
then you go do a Batman or Wonder Woman solo movie next, and then round out the big three, and then have a conflict with the three of them. Something like Batman versus Superman is like movie 4, so you're
Yeah.
way into that.
Yeah.
And then you eventually could do other solos, like we do Green Lantern again, and not make it a mess. As much as I love, Ryan Reynolds, that one was rough.
He's the best. Yeah. You know, my biggest like regret about the DCEU and how everything is getting like canceled or changed or shelved
Hmm.
is we got about 30 seconds of Joe Manganiello as Deathstroke.
Yeah, I know.
And
Going
well,
on the
he
yacht.
he was in the Snyder cut, but from like I've read that like Deathstroke was supposed to be the villain in Ben Affleck was going to direct a solo Batman movie, and
Yeah.
Manganiello's Deathstroke was going to be the villain, and I hope that if all I want is the multiverse theory to be true, so I can find one where that exists, because that's all I've ever wanted in a movie.
So, do you want to hear my fan pitch? A really quick elevator one for a great, I think, solo Batman movie, just based on
Yes.
like the element. So, Court of Owls, of course. Rash or Raish, I know people pronounce it differently. Al Ghul, as one of
I'm a
your
race guy myself.
Raish. I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember how the cartoon, because that's how that was fundamental for me. I think they said Raz, but I'll do Raish Al Ghul. And then Deathstroke would be such a fantastic if you stick to the two. I know getting into 3 villains can be kind of messy. But I think
Mhm.
you could do those two working together, and then you could put in something like a Mr. Freeze as almost a third party chaos. So Court of Owls overall, with Ra's Raish trying to bring in Bruce Wayne and Batman. And then you could have Deathstroke would be just such a great one, and maybe even Deadshot. Now I'm throwing too many villains in there, but I really feel that they did Deadshot dirty because he's been one of my favorites for a long time. And
Oh yeah.
in Suicide Squad, that was just. But then the Suicide Squad actually loved it, the one that James Gunn directed.
Yep.
So there's so much potential, and there's so much good source material that they can pull from, and it's almost baffling to me how they keep making bad movies.
Serious, right? Like any halfway competent writer should be able to come up with something better than using the Joker for the 9th time in 4 years.
And then whoever decided that Jared Leto should be the Joker, and like they wrote the damage on his head,
Yeah.
it's almost a meme. It's the kind of thing that you would think that they wrote as a joke, and someone accidentally left it in there, and they're like, "Oh no, now we've already filmed it. We've already paid the guy."
Yeah. And with Jared Leto, I see what he was going for. And I can kind of respect that. Like he took a shot, and
It's charitable. Yeah, okay. He took a shot. Yeah,
I respect the effort. But you saw the Snyder cut, right?
I did.
Yeah.
It
So
was,
like,
and I liked it better. It didn't like maybe I
well,
was a little poisoned by the original version, but it didn't change my mind on the film too much.
and I kind of look at them as two separate things entirely. But that whole the last like 20 minutes or whatever, the nightmare, uh, where they're in like the future or whatever, and Deathstroke.
Yeah.
And I'm spoiling this, but it's been out for like a year, so.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But Jared Leto was much better in that, I thought. And
Yeah.
because he wasn't playing it so like over the top, and even though Joker is over the top, there is a point. And actually, going back to Mr. Freeze, so my 2 picks for the Batman sequel would be, I would also say Mr. Freeze, um, which, funnily enough, Scott Snyder's the run I was talking about, the Batman run,
Hmm.
that's actually where Court of Owls was created. The one thing I didn't like about it was what they did with Mr. Freeze. He made it so, spoilers to the 12-year-old Batman Volume 2 run,
Hmm.
uh, they made it so Mr. Freeze's motivations through the entire kind of issue or two or three, whatever, that was devoted to him was the same. He was a guy trying to fund his research to save his wife, which is, that's what everyone loves about Mr. Freeze. Like, he's not
Yeah.
greedy, he's not a monster. Like, he's doing monstrous things for a good, noble reason. But in in Snyder's run, it turns out that this woman who is in cryo freeze, that this his Nora, she is he's never actually met her, and she is like he's just some deranged dude who fell in love with this frozen woman they had frozen for research since like the 1930s or something. And like,
Yeah.
it was like you took out the
Like,
heart of the character. Yeah.
yeah,
No. But Mr. Freeze, and then I want to see Clayface if they can make it somewhat believable, because I think,
Clayface. Hmm.
yeah, he's got a lot of potential, I think. Um, and Hush would be my third, I think, but I think it's too similar to what they did with Joker, or sorry, Riddler.
Riddler. And that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking, that it was similar to the book, and to the whole design and the vibe. Like, I really liked, is it Paul Dano, I think, is the actor,
Yeah.
as Riddler. And I thought that was cool that they did like oh yeah, if Riddler was real, he'd basically be like a deranged psycho from like the movie Seven, and Kevin Spacey's awful character. That was
Yeah.
so well done. But yeah, it would be tough to also do Hush and I'm just give some of those some breathing room. I really like your idea of um, do some Freeze, and then Clayface is fantastic because he's another good one from Batman the Animated Series. I feel like we could make an entire spin-off podcast on just like how good was Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, I know. You could talk about every single episode,
Yeah,
like start to finish.
yeah.
Which, okay,
And then
maybe.
Batman Beyond too. I'm a huge Batman Beyond fan. That was one I remember watching every
Yeah.
afternoon after school. I think I was like, I might have been 11 or 12 when it came out.
Yep.
Um,
Same here.
Terry McGinnis was just such a good continuation.
Yep. And yeah, I remember, because I read comics, so I knew that it was different, but like, I think I remember it differently. I remember feeling differently about Batman Beyond when I was a kid versus now, versus how I probably actually felt about it.
Hmm.
Like, I was into it as a kid in that it was another cool show I could watch when I got home from school.
Yep.
But I remember I had like so many toys, and like I'm pretty sure I had a one year for my birthday or Christmas, I just asked for I was just like, anything that says Batman Beyond on it, I want. And I still have at my mom's house, I have some of like the
Hmm.
Batmobile from Batman Beyond, and like, man,
Yep.
yeah, that was a cool way to continue the story of Batman
Hmm.
from what they did with the animated series without.
And old Bruce Wayne, again voiced by Kevin Conroy, is one of my favorite versions of Batman, just because he's become so gruff and so like, you kids get off my lawn about it.
Yeah.
But he's still intimidating.
Hmm.
And one thing that both Batman Animated Series and Batman Beyond had in common is killer intro songs. Like
Oh
the
yeah.
music in those, the for Batman Animated Series, you got like this sweeping orchestral like violins, and then Batman Beyond's like future rave music, and it is so hype. I still listen to it occasionally. It's on my gym playlist.
So, dude, me too. And I could pick out the Batman the animated series theme song from the first note. no
Yeah.
problem. um, yeah, there's a really cool documentary on YouTube called Heart of Darkness about the making of Batman the animated series and all like the hoops they had to jump through. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll check it out. And then speaking of music, just because it popped in my head, I don't know if you've probably at this point we're talking about a lot of comic book adaptations, but 90s Spider-Man animated series and then 90s X-Men. Like, I don't
X-Men.
understand how they came up. None of those soundtracks had to go that hard, but they did. And it was just like banger after banger.
Right. Yeah.
That's also a great show.
Yeah, the X-Men one I remember for sure. And I know if I heard the Spider-Man one, I'd remember it, but the X-Men one has been like ingrained in my memory. Even though Spider-Man, I always liked Spider-Man more than the X-Men. But yeah, and then hearing the X-Men theme pop up in Doctor Strange too.
Yeah.
That was
I was even more excited for I guess spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, though this is like midway through the movie. Fantastic Four getting Reed Richards to show up.
Yes.
And it's Jim from The Office, and I'm honestly there for it.
Yes.
I think he did a great job, and I am so ready to see that solo movie.
Yeah. And, I mean, there's rumors that he's not going to be Reed Richards. Like, the guy who runs the MCU has said, like, fans wanted it so much, we were like, okay, we'll give you this multiverse version of him, but we're going to have someone else for the actual, be Reed Richards in the MCU.
Nope. Too late. He's already, hashtag not Reed Richards. They switch him out. Yeah.
I don't know how you backpedal on that. Like, and I know people say like they didn't care for him too much, but like he was so good. As like the thing about Reed Richards that people forget is that he makes a lot of stupid mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's smarmy. He's so like, and then when they introduced him like in the world's smartest man, and he comes out with like a little smirk, I'm like that seems like a good Reed Richards, because the bad adaptations make him too perfect.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think that a good Reed Richards is he's his own worst enemy, and he gets in his own way. He's neglectful of his family. Like, you can do some really cool and dark stuff with a guy whose superpower on paper seems pretty silly. Like, oh, he's stretchy, but he's also that's not really a superpower. Superpower is he is that smart. It's just he is also an idiot.
Exactly.
At both times. Yeah.
He is a remarkably flawed individual. Like like you said, he's so arrogant, and I feel like that's where all of his like dumbassishness comes from. And but I thought I thought Krasinski did a good job, and I want so bad for him to be Reed moving forward. Hi, Diego. I was going to ask you something. I had something I was going to ask you.
Then we started on No Sleep, and then we got really deep into 90s superhero,
animated into comics. Yeah. Okay, kind of circling back to horror writing. What's the scariest book and or story you've ever read?
Oh, that's a tough one. Like an actual book that freaked me out. I could say movie pretty easily. It's a very conventional choice, but Exorcist always got to me, and I think it's because I was brought up Catholic. And actually just had this conversation on a Skype call about a project, because they were asking what really scares you on this like religious horror side. And I remember when I was a kid, after watching The Exorcist, which by the way, I snuck in and watched it. I think I was like 7 or 8, and my parents were asleep, and it was on late at night, and I went out and watched it. Which, if you're parents to 7 or 8 year olds, don't let them do that. It's not my parents' fault. They were sleeping. It's all on me. But I still had nightmares to this day, and for like months solid, I would have nightmares because I ended up being afraid that I was being possessed. Like, at any point, you're like, how would you know? Which is that really deep religious horror, but also gets into, fear of mental illness, because you wouldn't know if you're experiencing that.
Yeah.
So, Tremblay's Head Full of Ghosts actually freaked me out quite a bit, and that's a recent one, but it deals with a lot of those same themes about how can you trust yourself, and what happens if you harm those you care about, and is it your fault? Are there external forces that are putting pressure on you? it's all really terrifying if you stop and think about it. So you try not to. But I'll say Tremblaze was the scariest I've read in a while. And I guess going back to when I was a kid, I mean, I read huge Stephen King fan. Can't wait to pick up his new one, which I think just came out.
Fairy Tale.
Fairy Tale. And I remember Eye of the Dragon was one of his other kind of like dark fantasy ones from years ago. But I read it when I was, again, too young for the book. I think I was probably like 12. And it is terrifying. It's really not just the surface level monster, but also just everything wrong with this town and the way that adults sort of let children get hurt and can turn a blind eye to it. So,
and I love that there's an explanation for it. Like it's like kind of painted in the background as to why things in Derry are the way they are. I love that, and that's something that the movies I thought would have benefited from if they'd. So spoilers for, you've seen both the movies, I'm sure, right?
I have, and I was actually about to ask you what you thought of them.
I thought they were fantastic too, like
with a caveat. Okay.
Yeah, with a caveat. So there was I think it was the opening scene in the second one, where they're at like the fair or whatever, and they beat up the gay dude and throw him over the bridge. And that scene happens in the book, obviously, but it's explained that like whenever Pennywise is around, like it kind of breeds this like hatred in Derry, and it makes the people in Derry do these horrible things, or I guess act out on their worst impulses, which is some bigots beating up a gay man, and B, it lets people turn a blind eye to it, like because you never hear about it again. Like you just see Pennywise, standing there on the riverbank, and then that's it.
Chomping down.
Yeah, exactly. Just nom 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 nom.
I always liked too with that, because I believed it was really ambiguous the way the King wrote it. Is Pennywise influencing the people of Derry to be evil, or is it sort of Derry's evilness that he's feeding on? Is it a mixture of the two? That's where I thought there was some blurring and grayness. Of course, in the book, the thing that is landed in Derry long before it was Derry. But how much of the evilness can you blame on this corrupting force, and how much of it is just human nature being awful that connects so well with this monster? This it's sort of like a alien, from another dimension, sort of weird. King gets really into the mythos and everything with Dark Tower. Like the nerd in me loves.
That's what I was gonna ask.
So that's my favorite work that he's done, especially probably the first 4 books in Dark Tower, because I think he started getting a little too meta. I liked that he was. I actually liked that he was a character in his own books, but the last 3 volumes are pretty wild from where it started. But like the Gunslinger and Drawing of the Three. Wizard and Glass is probably my favorite out of all of them. It's just so wonderful because I'm also a huge Western fan. Like I love Westerns.
Yeah.
And seeing this blending of horror and dark fantasy in a Western setting, I'm like, just pour that into my eyeballs. Like I love every part of that. And he nails it, and the way he wove his characters in there. And that reminds me of No Sleep. I think that if King was starting now, he'd probably be drawn to No Sleep, and he'd be one of those writers putting out these massive, 40-part series where all the characters are connected. And then he would do another 40-part series next year, and it would call back a lot of the characters from this, and everything would just sort of weave together. And that's one of the cool things to tie it all back to No Sleep, where that potential is there. And it's neat because you do see a few series take off, like the Surviving Camping, super popular. You see all this fan art for it. People are, shipping characters. And there aren't many places like that online where you can have an organic fan base grow like that. Mostly you're waiting on publishers who are able to gatekeep that, and you have to hope that maybe you put out a series that responds well and gets good sales and is popular, something like a Harry Potter. But on No Sleep, anyone has the potential of writing something like that and really engaging with thousands of readers and getting hundreds of comments on each post and having all these fan theories and things pop out there, which as a writer, I'm sure you probably feel similar, is one of the greatest feelings ever. And it's just so cool that that's an option. And the biggest shame, I think, is that No Sleep is really it on Reddit, or that I can think of online outside of fan fiction, where you might be able to get that sort of response because there aren't many competitors. You don't have the fantasy equivalent to No Sleep on Reddit. You don't have another horror equivalent outside of No Sleep. You've got Writing Prompts, which is its own animal, and then the next biggest thing is probably like Short Scary Stories, which maybe has not even a 30th of the audience that No Sleep does.
Yeah. And I mean, shout out to Short Scary Stories because they are doing good stuff over there.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we were talking about it before we started recording, actually. It's been a huge, like, the instant gratification is, like, it was the best thing about writing for No Sleep, 100%. And, like, I obviously I loved all the comments I would get, all the messages from people saying I scared the shit out of them. Like, I loved it, but it was getting all that right away. And since I've been trying to go, I don't want to say legit because writing on No Sleep is legitimate writing, but like trying to go the more traditional route. Like I'm submitting stories to anthologies and to podcasts, to collections, to publishers, novels to publishers, and like you either get an outright no or you don't hear from them for 6 months and then you get a no. And like I'm always tempted to go back to No Sleep, but I feel like I have kind of bitched about it to the point where if I do go back to No Sleep, people are gonna be like, yeah, you fucking bootlicker. Like
write or make an alt, and then it's not like you were banned. It's not like you're circumventing. I did, and I think I made 3 alts at one time, and 2 of them I have a couple of stories on there, and one of them I did a group story with like 3 other writers, and it's still one of my most popular to this day. I think it's at like 6,000 or 7,000. But it was a weird. We each like took turns writing it paragraph by paragraph, and we're so shocked that it did well. But I 100%. I'm just looking at the stats from. I was telling you before we started recording. I posted. It was actually 26 hours ago to No Sleep, a story that I'd written. I think almost a year ago. I think it was like last October. I wrote this on a commission, and then was given permission to share it. So it has from 26 hours ago, 2,500 upvotes. And now they've got these post insights, which is another horrible thing that we can get fixated on and look at the statistics. And it says 559,000 total views. I have no idea how accurate that is, but my background before finding it, and I don't say any of that as bragging, and it's not even that large compared to, I think, top stories of the week are probably in the 3, 4, and 5,000. Right. But just how much that clicks with you immediately, and it feels like you're being read, and it's amazing because before posting to Reddit, I think I had like a WordPress blog where I'd put up a story maybe once a month, and if I got 8 views, I'd be ecstatic. I'd be like, wow, 8 people read my short story this month. That's amazing. And then you post on No Sleep and you get so spoiled, jaded, I don't even know the right word for it, by seeing all these shiny numbers, and you're like, wow, 2.5 thousand upvotes, 500,000 views. Where else can you get that for your fiction without being traditionally published?
Right. Yeah, there really is nothing else like it. And like I said, I definitely have bitched about it a lot and will probably continue to bitch about it a lot, but it is its own thing. You can't go anywhere else and get the instant gratification. You can't go anywhere else and get the immediate, and as much as I hate the word, exposure.
Yeah.
I'll pay you an exposure.
You're right. And sometimes they pay you in money too. And that's another thing with No Sleep, is that it can lead to other opportunities, whether it's narrations or other projects. People are looking at this platform, which is another reason why it's just such a uh, to me. And I mean, I've bitched about No Sleep a lot. I have issues with a ton of the rules and the enforcement of
Mhm.
rules. But the biggest complaint I think I have is that there is only No Sleep. I think that if there was a competitor or competitors, if possible, either in just the Reddit writing sphere, but especially with horror fiction, it would be so much healthier for all of them, because right now No Sleep is really the only game in town, and
Yeah.
it illustrates what's the issue with a monopoly on something, where if you want to get read by 1,000 people in a day, this is basically your only choice. Or you can go to like AO3 or Wattpad and write fan fiction, which I have very complicated feelings about. I don't write it. I respect that fan fiction gets people writing, but I think that it often teaches bad habits. So it's one of those
Yeah.
like murky, overall good, but with caveats. But anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, I think if No Sleep had other competitors, it would, one, force No Sleep to grow and change, and two, if you didn't like it, if you didn't enjoy the rules, you could go somewhere else and still get things read. Instead of right now, it's just like, okay, well, I'm going to have to try to sell this to a podcast, and some of the podcasts do very well. No Sleep
Yeah.
podcast, who's unaffiliated with the subreddit, is great, but you're going to be waiting 6 or 8 months to hear back from them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. For sure. Well, we just hit about an hour, which
okay.
that flew by.
Yeah, that was a quick one.
um. Yeah. I'm gonna stop the recording, but don't hang up the call just yet.
All right.
Oh, let me. I'll cut this little section out. So I'm just gonna do a quick sign off.
Yep.
We'll be back next week. I'm just kidding. Um. I don't know what to say for a sign off. Do we
You
really
got to
need a
have a
sign off?
catchphrase. You got to have some kind of. I don't
Man,
know.
the catchphrase is pretty much just the title of the show. I'll talk to you later. We should be writing.
We should be writing. We should be
we,
writing.
we should be writing. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
I have to work.